Um, you used to do this thing, and it doesn't happen anymore, from my understanding. And I wish you would bring it back because uh, I used to see the feedback, and I think it used to really hit on that resident experience.
Is it a welcome letter?
It's a welcome package. Yeah, I would love to talk about welcome packages if you have a second. So for those of you who don't know, this it might seem little, but again, resident experience creates value, and value creates NOI for investors. If you could.
Yeah. So there was a customer that we worked with that leased to own. And so these people are taking possession of a property that they're anticipating ownership of down the line. So what we did is we put together very inexpensive but thoughtful welcome packages. So we would put like a case of water in the refrigerator, cheese, crackers, and meats, things like that, just a small dish in the refrigerator on the same day that we performed our quality check on the property after the clean. And then we'd leave a letter on the countertop that just welcomed them to the neighborhood, congratulated them on their new home, their new experience. And then what we did is we gave them another direction, if you will, to say, if you experience, if you need to call in a repair, this is the phone number you call at your property management company. So it just made things a little more clear because tenants, they're looking to move in. The things that are important to them are how much am I paying? When can I move in? How am I going to coordinate getting my stuff here from my last property? So things like, who do I call when I've got a maintenance issue? Those little things go by the wayside. So it just gave them a final touch point of this is the number you call if you need to call. And then of course we recommend using Superior Contracting and Maintenance as your contractor of choice when you call that in, because we're pretty confident they'll be happy with the repairs and the thoughtfulness of the experience. So that's something that we used to do, and it is something we're bringing back.
Cool. That was where I was going with that. I would love to hear that. You actually hit on two really interesting points. I'd like to take them one at a time. The first is I was thinking back just to earlier in our conversation, and you had mentioned when a turn gets completed, you don't want work orders immediately. To that end, do you guys look into like average time to first work order post turn or something interesting like that?
We don't. That would be interesting.
Okay. Cool stuff.
That would be interesting.
On the other side, you're talking about residents in this lease to own program. And the lease to own has become kind of big, especially through fractional ownership. We're seeing it at companies like Divvy. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there in the market, but I know for me personally, Divvy comes to mind quite often. What's your experience with these property management firms and how they approach maintenance and turns? Do you treat them differently or?
No, we treat all of our customers the same. It doesn't matter if you've got, 28,000 doors or if you've got 60 doors. They all get the same treatment. All customers are important. We do look to reserve some capacity for the larger customers because we know factually that we're getting, dozens and dozens and dozens of work orders from them, on a weekly basis. So we need to reserve that capacity for those larger customers. But in terms of the process and the product, it's the same.
Gotcha. Another thing that we've been hearing, communication is important. We know communication with residents is important. Big Ray Hetzman over at Property Meld, he speaks on that a lot. I think there's another communication gap that could be out there, and I'm wondering if you've experienced this. And what I mean is, just the same way you were talking about reserving capacity. Recently, we had some storms come through our local area, Atlanta. And when storms come through, we know there's such industries of storm chasing, and that chases insurance, etc. But other times there's light damages on the maintenance front and such. Is that relevant to you guys? And how do you interact with your property managers, or if storms are coming through, if there's proactive communication, is that something you're able to coordinate?
It is. So when storms come through, it's important to let your property management companies know that, hey, we do storm cleanup, right? We do whether it be fencing, roofing, gutter work, tree removal, siding, whatever it is. Letting your property management companies know, hey, this is something that we do. If we've got capacity, then we are able to facilitate those type of emergency needs. There was a storm, I think, that came through in, I want to say 2012, that was big. Tornadoes and hail ripped through Stockbridge and McDonough. I don't know if anybody was still in the industry at that time. That's with us now, but tons of siding damage, vinyl siding, roof repairs, and so we mobilized at that time to all hands on deck for that. But we don't service. For us personally, we don't service anything in Florida. So when you've got the hurricanes that come through, we don't go there.
Gotcha. Another thing that I'm hoping we can touch base on is large maintenance companies versus small companies. You yourself, at one point, started with a small company. I think you were in somewhere around 150, 200 square foot office, jamming out to some nice 90s R&B. How do you go from here to there, and what does that mean? More so, not so interested in the journey. That's another talk for another time. Through that journey, how does your product offering change, and how, if at all, does it benefit property managers? And what are some of the, maybe some of the cons? I don't know if you're dealing with a more bureaucratic environment. The fact that Superior has been able to scale the way they have, and based on a little personal knowledge, I know you guys have been doing a lot in the way of being a very tech-forward company. I mean, Superior's on the cusp of being prop tech in some regards. Definitely still a maintenance company, but highly innovative. What does that mean for property managers? Are there times they should go with their local contractor, Joe the plumber?
Absolutely. So, pros and cons to it. I'm a big fan of chucking a truck. Because I was chucking a truck. I'm a big fan of that. It allows you to build strong relationships with your property manager. You can get, we'll call him Chuck. You can get Chuck to do things with a quick phone call, and it's immediate. What it really comes down to is a lot of variation between Chucks. So when you've got a really good, local contractor that works for you, whether it's heating and air, electrical, plumbing, general, garage door tech, whatever it is, when you've got a good guy, you want to keep him. You want to use him because that guy will bend over backwards for you. It's hard to compete with his pricing because he's got low overhead. It's hard to compete with his ability to, just jump right on things if he's got the availability, So I encourage property management companies that when you've got people like that, stick with them and use them. The issue becomes as your company grows and you add doors, how many Chucks in a truck can you juggle? And at what cost, right? Do you need to hire a maintenance coordinator? Do you need to hire another maintenance coordinator? Because you'll have to have, dozens and dozens of different contractors, multiple plumbers, multiple electricians, multiple general guys, multiple everything. And they all may do things a little bit differently. Even if you operate in a meld, they may or may not communicate the same way. Some are responsive in the meld. Some guys may have been fantastic. You go to a meld and now they're not good. So I encourage keeping the good, chuck in a truck type contractors. Where the larger companies I think come into play is not necessarily on your, first 2 work orders of the day or 3 work orders of the day. It's work order 4 through 40. And it adds one point of contact where you can say, let me reach out to this company that's got 35 open work orders for us. I can get, one response. I've got one point of contact. I've got, fairly consistent quality, fairly consistent communication. So that's the way I view it is you've got, if you've got a good chuck in a truck, keep them, use them. It's tough to compete with that type of person. But when you've got, work order 4 through 40, that's where I think a larger company is more beneficial. It'll help keep keep your overhead lower because you're able to just send it to the same company and have that consistent communication, consistent pricing, just more consistency across the board.
Cool. Cutting out administrative costs. That makes sense. Maintenance coordinators are expensive, and working through these systems. Vendor cafe. It's great. Vendor cafe. We've seen a lot of different platforms out there, though, that they're super efficient, from my understanding, for property managers. I have seen friction I've seen a lot of friction personally on the vendor side of things. I've seen stop work happen because administrative blockades, and that it pisses me off, because I know we've got tenants out there. You've got tenants and you've got residents out there, and they're having a bad experience, and they want to receive service. And to your point, work order 4 through 40, if you've got these larger companies that are aligning with larger maintenance companies, large property manager, large maintenance company, all of a sudden service stops. What are your thoughts around this, and how, if at all, can this be resolved through partnership?
So I think a lot of these operational platforms, that's what I'll call them, they have their customer in mind. Their customer is the property management company. So they're building this out with the property management company in mind, and often the tenant in mind as well, because the property management company takes into account the tenant. It's very rare, if ever, I believe, that the vendors are included in the development of these things. So we're kind of left to say, hey, here's how you do it, and then we come and do it, and we notice some different things that we can improve on. And we'd love an opportunity to get in front of some of these different platforms and discuss our side and what we see and how maybe that can be improved. So that's something I notice.
Very cool. Is there anything that Superior's focusing on right now, in particular, in order to generate more value for property managers?
Everything we do revolves around, trying to generate more value from being able to get so you got to be as competitive as you can. So now you've got your typical maintenance guys competing with your builders. So
makes sense. Cool.
And all those new acquisition renovation teams, now that new homes are not being acquired, now they're falling into the turn space. So we're seeing that as well. So companies that had new acquisition departments that were very successful, that have now slowed their buying, they want to keep those crews busy. They want to keep them aboard. So they're moving those crews into, giving them the opportunity to bid on these turns that they weren't doing before.
Gotcha.
I mean, building is really slowing. So you've got all these builders that were, building, they come from a new construction environment. Now they're falling into the renovation maintenance environment because they're out there, they're available. So I think it's going to drive costs down, especially now. Building is slowing. That's a savings that can get passed along, of course. The cost it takes to get work orders through our system, to get that down by using offshore resources. Our cost of ticket down, right?